Hola, Culés. Back again with another episode of Offside, the Barca football videocast. We also have a podcast. So if you haven't subscribed to that, please do subscribe. It's on Spotify and Apple iTunes. But this one is what we do on YouTube. And this week, we're going to talk about something that has probably created the maximum hope in this season, which hasn't been the best for us. Let's just be honest about that. And that topic goes by the name of Lamine Yamal. What a phenomenon. 16 years old, carrying the hopes of this entire fan world, and what a player he is. So, what we thought that we would do in this episode is look at Lamine, look at what makes him so special, look at how is he compared to similar players of his age or around his age who are coming up, and what does that mean for Barca, and what does Barca need to do to nurture this talent, to build this up so that he can be an asset for us for years to come. With that, I welcome Dom.
That was a lovely intro for him. And you're absolutely right. This is a 16-year-old boy, and we're putting all of our hopes and dreams on his shoulders, which is, it's a no small feat. It's just unbelievable. We've not seen anything like that since a player I won't name because those comparisons are just not healthy for him right now. What today will be a bit more positive because lately we've done videos on Barca's problems of players underperforming. But when it comes to Lamine Yamal, there's not much bad to say because this boy is just phenomenal. This everything he does turns to gold. So I feel like this will be a much more positive episode, and I love that for a change. So here we are, and this is a very interesting sequence against an athletic club with Lamine right here, and the rest of the squad are in very much a transitional moment. But before I go into it, I'd just like to a couple of words on Lamine's profile as such. I've made some notes right here so you can follow along. And these are some of the clearest strengths that Lamine gives you at this moment. And it's very difficult because people know what he's all about. They know that he's a great dribbler. He's electrifying. He's very fast. He's agile. He manipulates his body. And all of that is very true. And you can see it with your eye, even without going in depth. But what makes him so special is this bipedal nature. This means that he's a two-way threat. Lamine can cut inside, he can go on the outside, he can hurt you in every single way, and defenders generally don't know how to press him so that they can easily or even consistently take the ball away from him. So what happens in this sequence is a very similar thing. Barca are transitioning from defending, they just recover the ball, they had to quickly attack, and the best way to do that is through Lamine Yamal. Koundé takes the ball, I think it was Koundé. He gives the ball to Lamine, and he receives the ball and immediately, with a slight turn of his body, which we'll see in the clips later on, you can't really see it here, with a slight turn of his body, he immediately eliminates the first player next to him and he starts running with the ball. Now, this is another thing with him. He is currently being used under Xavi as an isolation and transition winger. Doesn't mean that that's all he is, but at the moment, that's what we're getting from him. So when he sees space, not large distances, but space that's available, and he's one versus one with his marker, that's usually Curtis. That means he will progress the ball, and he also is very good at running with the ball and then carving out the angles for a shot for himself. What this means is that he's a very instinctive finisher. When I say instinctive, that means that he can manipulate his body, he can turn and twist until he has an angle to shoot. And then once that happens, he is very quick to release the ball and actually he scores the goal. This is a goal scoring sequence, which I normally don't use, but this one in particular shows us the nature of the boy and how he can actually make changes to his body and his environment to create the best possible scenario for himself to score. And he is also a very multifaceted threat. What this means is that he's not just a goal scoring threat, but he's also a chance creator. This is what makes the current Lamine Yamal very special.
Same. I'll just echo what you said. I think his bipedal nature and the fact that he's a multifaceted threat, right? It comes out if you look, and we look at the data later on, but his overall game, except aerials, there's a consistency in his capability across the board, even interceptions and tackles. And at 16-year-old, the decision making that he has when facing a ball, what to do, what's the next step, it's quite phenomenal for his age. The only thing that he probably does not have is that explosive speed, which would have been amazing if he was blessed with that. But if you look at his frame, his legs, just his physical body and the way it's evolving, we don't know what that will be like in 3 to 4 years. Right now, we are seeing a very raw version being
Hmm.
used in a team that does not really have a very defined structure or way of playing. So we use him as a stopgap measure. Let's use him as that white thread because we don't have a white thread. But if he's used in the right way, in the right coaching setup and nurtured and guided, this can be a truly special player. I won't use words like generational and I won't use words like, okay, the next Messi, because that just doesn't make sense. But he can be an absolutely special player to mark years to come in FC Barcelona.
Absolutely. His both mental and physical growth is very important because this is a child of 16 years old, right? So we don't know what he will grow into, both physically and mentally. I've seen a couple of comparisons actually floating around with O'Neill, and I think Rafinha was the one that caught the most attention from the fans. But I think at the top end of his ability, we're talking Angel Di Maria level and beyond, so something like that. But all depends, as I've said, on how he develops physically and mentally. And that's the thing with him. We're making big predictions here. I'm not here, but generally people do, right? And huge claims for a 16-year-old kid. He's still growing, and apparently he's grown about 10 centimeters or so since last year. And that will, people seem to downplay this, but that will play a big part in how he develops as a profile as well. However, I will say something. This type of players like Lamine, they don't generally or historically, they're not always the ones to decide games. So not really. They can, but there's one or two main aspects that I'd like to mention here that will be the determining factor for this. And that's his ball striking and box crashing. And he already has excellent ball striking. His box crashing is getting along, but if he can master those two things, he will be a game changer. And with that, I will show us a couple of clips of his ball striking and his ball crashing, and I will talk about it a bit more. So here's the first clip that I want to analyze with you. It's a very short clip, and we'll see Lamine Yamal on the right side. He is starting his run towards the box. The ball will get to him eventually, but what I want you to focus here is his intention to crash the box. So he sees the space, sees where the ball is, and he attacks it ferociously. And then he makes an attempt at goal with a strike technique or a shooting technique that I dubbed the slingshot strike, and you'll see why. So here's the ball. Here's the space that he needs to conquer. He goes in. He's immediately on top of the ball. He's very quick to explode and get in contact with the ball, and then he releases the ball very quickly. And I call it the slingshot strike because he doesn't have much back lift. Mean doesn't need that. He needs only to pull his leg a little bit back, and then he can, like a slingshot, he just fires forward, and the ball gets power, it gets precision, it gets that intent and that venom in it, if I can say it that way. If we go one more time, sees a space, he explodes into it, and then he releases the shot with power, with precision. It doesn't end in a goal, doesn't have to end in a goal, but he does it very quickly, very efficiently, and that's why this sequence for me is very promising. And in this second clip, I want to focus on a different shooting technique from Lamine Yamal. This one I call the scoop up shot. So this is basically where Lamine goes for placement over pure power in the shot. Let's look at this clip. So he's right there, he's running with the ball, and now look how he scoops it up. It doesn't end in a goal again, but this shot didn't have as much power as the last one, but that one was all about precision and placement. This is something that Lionel Messi does really well, where he doesn't generate a lot of power, but at the same time, he makes these shots so unbelievably difficult to save because they have the perfect placement, they have the perfect trajectory, and they have the perfect intent behind them. So Phil Lamine has this in him, and these two techniques both really well for his future, which means that he can adapt, he can pick and choose what's needed at that moment. And he's very good at that because his decision making is at a high level already. So, this technique or this profile that he has all the makings of a great goal scorer in the near future.
Those clips were pretty amazing, Dom, in the sense of how they captured what you were trying to explain, what makes him so special. That was really eye catching out there. It is his chance creation for the team that really stands out for me more than even his particular individual skill. His individual skills are there, but somehow I feel whenever Lamine's on the pitch, Barca have more chances to score, and he makes that happen somehow.
That's what he shines the most, and that's what Barca they look to him to be that differential player on the flanks to create the chances for the poachers, the goal scorers in the middle. But I think it's interesting, and I will show you the sequence in a second. But I think it's interesting because we talked about his evolution and his growth, physical and mental. And I feel like if he grows even further, he can be this big stride breaker and one versus one fixer from wide areas such as Dembele, for example, or even Aleao, for example, who's been very popular nowadays in the Barca timeline. But in that case, he gains an advantage in open space, right? With direct football as an outlet profile. But then in that case, it comes with a cost because he might lose some of his elasticity, some of his fluidity to manipulate his frame and exploit every imaginable angle that he's exploiting right now. If he doesn't grow or just grows a little bit and doesn't lose that side of his profile, then his end game could be a box crasher, as we said, an elite creator in tight spaces as an inverted winger, which he is currently, or as a roaming number 10, even in a less positional system. Why in a less positional system? Because Lamine at the moment is a player who's a low touch or low volume winger. And I don't see him as a tempo setter. He needs to be on the ball in open spaces, exploit the space, do quick transitions, do quick sequences, and then have an attempt a goal really quickly. If he doesn't grow, he will have the tight space manipulation, he will have the ball striking in chance creation and shooting, and he will have the intelligence, which he still has, to read the play. All of that translates to a lead number 10, for example. But if he grows, if he's much bigger in the near future than he is now, he might be more of an outlet, more of a physical presence, more of a breaker and fixer out wide. So in this scenario, I will focus on the chance creation, as I've said. I've not put all the players on the pitch because most of them are still in the box and Barca are in a very transitional moment. And I want to focus on this because this shows us his capacity for ball manipulation, control, for dribbling and carrying in while in motion, in full flight, while also being tightly marked because he immediately has a player on top of him, but doesn't really hurt his chances. And he's agile and fluid. He manipulates his frame well. And he can wiggle out of pressure, which is exactly what he does here. He eliminates the first player almost seamlessly and carries the ball forward to this area over here. Now, naturally, these players are all running forward with him. Barca have two players who are trying to support the attack. One is here, one goes over here, and Betis, the team that Barca play against here, immediately collapse on Lamine as well. So you have this player that goes here, and you have this player that's trying his best to track back and keep up with Lamine and closes him down from behind. But what ends up happening actually is even under pressure, even in full flight, Lamine can still send a chipped ball over the top into the run of his teammate right here, and Barca get a chance on goal, which sadly doesn't end up in a goal, but still shows us that even in a suboptimal situation where he's tightly marked, where he's collapsed upon, where he's in full flight, and he has to make a quick decision, basically do something out of nothing, he can still do it. And I've put these two evolution paths for him there. If he grows further, he can be this wide presence. He can be the fixer out wide who exploits large distances on the pitch. So this whole area over here would be his to exploit. But if he doesn't grow, he can be more of a number 10, potentially a box crasher, a creator in tight spaces and over smaller distances. Because at the moment, as we've seen, he can exploit space, but not necessarily over large distances. So he doesn't have that running power just yet. But even if that doesn't happen, if he doesn't evolve into that, there is always a path that is viable for him as a player. So he'll be effective no matter what happens. It just depends on what kind of a profile we will eventually get. So the first clip I want you to look at is actually Lamine under immediate pressure, Lamine turning against the pressure and then exploiting a portion of the open space. Not a lot, but he does run with the ball. He is a progressive carrier and he can deal with the pressure that's immediately on his back. Why am I saying this? I'm saying this because if he's to be a number 10, if he's to be a more central player, these situations are crucial. If he can handle these situations with players on top of him, immediately collapsing on him, if he can do well in these situations, then he has a future as a more central kind of player. Let's see the video and let's see what it's all about. I mean, turns this player effortlessly, progresses the ball over a certain period or a certain distance, and then we stop here. He turns back and he plays the ball back to his teammate. So he's progressed play. He's moved Barca up the pitch almost effortlessly, even though he has a man on his back. And this is very important, not just for the central areas, but also as we see in the clip here, for these wide areas and traditional moments and moving the ball up the pitch, conquering territory very quickly and very efficiently. So in this clip over here, we find Lamal again in tight spaces, and he's trying his best to fight through, let's call it a horde of other players. He's trying to manipulate his way out of a sticky situation, and it's a very short clip, but it shows us how he can be tightly marked and still come out on top, even though there's 2 or 3 players around him. If he stays like this, if this is his profile in the near future, and he might be moved in a more central position, Lamine Yamal can still be effective because he can twist and turn his way out of a sticky situation. He will still progress play and he can still create from those unfavorable, suboptimal situations. And I feel like that right there, this quality to make something out of nothing, to just be that game breaker of a profile for Barcelona, that to me is invaluable.
Completely agree with you. And that's basically, if you think about it, it's this ability when players are collapsing on him, his ability to wiggle out of that situation, or his ability to still keep his calm, manage the situation, and progress the play. And that is why Barca look better, right? Look a little bit more threatening. We don't look threatening at all these days, but at least when he's on the pitch, we at least have a semblance that something can happen. So if this can be nurtured and built upon by the right coaching, plus he has prodigious talent himself, I think there's hope for us to have someone really differential in that right flank of the pitch who can help the team for years to come.
And it'll be interesting to compare him to other young players because this is a struggling Barca team, right? And it's very difficult to be that differential quality, that the game breaker, and be the player that's going to top all the charts, that's going to impress everyone when the structure around him, the system around him is so dysfunctional, right? But he is doing exactly that. And that just speaks volumes of his quality because to be able to do that, even in a suboptimal environment, that's incredible.
So that's precisely what we want to do, to try and see now, Lamine, as compared to similar kind of players who are near his age group, and understand what are the differences or what can we make out of the data. All right. So I started with looking at his percentile rank amongst attacking mids and wingers in the top competitions last year, in the last 365 days. If you look at some of the ones that stand out, his non-penalty XG plus his ability to create or assist goals is in the 90s, which is what we were talking about, chance creation. And then you look into his progressive carries, his successful take-ons, his ability to dribble. That's 86 in the percentile rank for a 16-year-old. Even his interceptions, his progressive passing, receiving, his tackling, he's right at the top. That's the defensive part of the game. It is quite impressive for a 16-year-old to have this many number of highs when it comes to percentile rank, because we are literally ranking them with world-class players. Obviously, he's not the polished goal scorer yet, and that will take time. It will take anybody time. So obviously, his goals haven't scaled up that much, but his chance creation definitely augurs hope. So that was his percentile rank amongst attacking mids and wingers. We then went back into trying to see what other players like him could be. And I chose 4 players. So on the left-hand side, you can see Lamine's spider map, and on the right-hand side, Jamal Musiala. I've taken them because if you look at them, the profiles are similar, right? Weak at aerials, weak at recoveries, but very strong in all the other stuff. And I'll let you, Dom, talk about it while I go through the next 2. And the next 2 I took were Bradley Barcola and Bukayo Saka. Now, obviously, Saka has played a lot more, but I feel the position Saka plays in and the way Saka plays in and the chance creation that he does for Arsenal is very similar. Obviously, much more experienced, but he's still 21 years old, 5 years older than Lamine. In 5 years, when Lamine becomes what Bukayo Saka is today, what is that trajectory of growth? We don't know. But these are the 4 players that I found out from a profile perspective who are very similar to him. I would want to know your point of view.
It is very interesting to see how similar they actually are. And Bukayo Saka is lauded as one of the most proficient and most talented wingers in the world. And to see Lamine keeping up with him and keeping up with Bukayo Saka, that's part of an incredible Arsenal team. That speaks volumes to me because if Lamine is doing this at a dysfunctional Barcelona at 16 years old, so 5 years younger than the world class Saka, it's hard not to dream. It's hard not to believe that he will be 5 times better than Saka once he gets to his age. Of course, player development doesn't really work that way. It doesn't. It's not linear. We can't really say, oh, he's this good at this age. That must mean that he'll be that good at that age. It doesn't work that way. There's so many factors that go into it. But to me, just seeing how well he stacks up against these players who are much more developed and established and playing potentially in better teams, then it fills me with hope and it gives me that the spark that you talked about earlier when we actually watch Barca games for Lamine, for a 16-year-old kid, and that's just incredible.
These are the young upcoming stars everybody's talking, the next generation, right? But let's look into how they stack up. So I looked into, we started with goal creating actions per 90 and shot creation per 90, because from a chance creation perspective, I think that's pretty important. And let's look into what goal creating actions per 90, Lamine stacks at the
Hmm.
top among all of them. This is any activity that has happened which has led to a goal in which he has had a role to play. And this you're talking with that Arsenal team where Bukayo Saka plays, which is superbly functional, extremely well drilled, and quite frankly, dominating, the word that I would use. But if you look into his goal creating actions in this dysfunctional Barca team, he is above Bukayo Saka, he's above Jamal Musiala, he's above Bradley Barcola. Now we look into shot creation, Bukayo Saka actually is higher. But the shot creation does not always result in a goal creation. So both Bukayo and Musiala are better. And frankly, they should be. They've been almost playing 4 or 5 years of professional football in teams as drilled as Arsenal and Bayern Munich. So obviously, they have had that coaching, that discipline, that rigor that comes in. But pretty interesting to see from a chance creation perspective at this age compared to his peers and well established peers, how he stacks up. So if you look into XG compared last 365 days, you can see again, yes, he's not at the top, but obviously his goal scoring game hasn't polished up as of yet, right? So here you can see where Bukayo and Musiala are better off than that, and it's expected. And then if you look into all the others, I will call out two, but his non-penalty XG is better. So whenever it is open play, his quality actually improves, right? And that's evident. If you look at his assist capability, that's pretty much at par with the top players out there.
Yeah, I agree. And it comes back to the thing that we discussed earlier, which is, his chance creation is going to be elite no matter what happens. Just looking at this, yes, his goals are not there just yet, but we've seen in the clips and the board that he has the technique, he has the profile to at least turn into a great goal scorer in the near future. And these numbers from the very first graph that you showed me right now and everyone else who's watching, seeing the multifaceted profile, the attacking threat that he brings, right? It's not just chance creation, it's so many things, different things that culminate in the attacking threat. So he's the combination of XG and XA, the carries, and even the importance that he has, because if you look back at that first graph, he was in the top percentile ranking for progressive passes received, which means that the players are actively looking for him constantly, and the play flows through him. And that's why you said when it's open for when it's non-penalty XG, he is the man to look out for. And to me, it's just that's incredible, and it will keep getting better because that part of his game can only improve. I mean, I hope it does. And if he's nurtured and if he develops well and he's fit and healthy, the sky's the limit, right?
I cannot agree more, and I'll hold on to that progression part because that was very interesting. It is true today. If you look at Barca playing dysfunctional as we are,
Mm,
when he's on the pitch, he's the person seasoned pros are seeking to feed
mm,
that pass. So we'll now move into your progression stats and let's look into how they go. If you look at progressive carries per 90, he's just below Bradley Barcola. He's actually better than Bukayo. He's better than Musiala. which is pretty phenomenal. But that's where the frame comes in. He's a taller guy, stronger guy than either Bukayo or Jamal. And his frame is still not built. It's going to still evolve. And those long legs, the structure, the shoulder, all of that is going to play a massive role. His ability to do that. What we see in Frankie de Jong's ability to carry, they're like physical specimens. They can just keep running, right? And they have that frame to do that. If you look at passes per 90, again, not at the top, but not bad on how he's competing for that. If you look into progressive passes received, yes, Bukayo obviously is the established threat. He is the white man that Arteta uses to channel Arsenal's attack. So obviously he gets a lot more of that. But if you consider Musiala, he's right there. And these numbers will only improve over the years as he gets better and the team gets functional with a structured play. It's only going to get better. And then I wanted to look into the carries in the penalty box as well. He is outstripping Bukayo Saka and Jamal Musiala, taking those carries into the penalty box. Bradley Barcola is a wonderful dribbler, and I think PSG have a great talent in him. So I hope he also comes up in this manner. But when he's getting the chance in open play, he's not just making it count, he's actually taking it till the penalty box. He's trying to make something out of that.
Exactly. He's a fulcrum of this Barca team, but these stats are also indicative of the profile of the team because Lamine at the moment, as I've said, he's not a tempo setter. He's not someone who will necessarily use passing or high volume touches when it comes to passing the ball. He will rather carry it forward, run with it, as we can actually see in the stats as well. And just this carries into the penalty box. That just shows you that the box crashing is getting there, right? He's developing that side of his profile. We saw it in the clips, we saw it in the on the tactics board as well. And if he can get that at a high enough level, his profile will be deadly. It will be game changing for Barcelona as the team grows, as it becomes more stable, as it becomes more compact and more clear on what it wants to do. Then Lamine will also grow with it because his profile will have to adapt to whatever the team needs. And we've seen that with great players. I know the comparisons with Messi are not healthy, but at the same time, Messi always adapted to what the team needed. They needed a goal scorer, that was him. They needed a creator, that was him. They needed someone deep, that was him. They needed someone high, that was him. And Lamine can be that someone. Not now. He shouldn't be that someone at 16 years of age, but in the future, once he develops, he's a stable player, then we can talk about someone who is a leader on the pitch as well. And hopefully we get to that point soon.
Yeah, they say footballers turn into their prime when they are 26 to 30. It will take 10 years for Lamine Yamal to reach 26. Fingers crossed, injuries apart and health aside, if those can stay, which is what was very good with Messi. Like Messi also struggled till about 2021 with injuries and so on and so forth. But then he reached that space where he was never injured. Like for 10 years, there was never any injury. He was always playing every game, every match, every hour, every minute. If he can get that physical conditioning right and that frame picks up, he has all the time in the world to really hone in on his skills, build on something. Hopefully, we have a decent enough, meaningful sporting project and not what we are facing right now. But there is no reason why, in a few years' time, he won't be among the most coveted footballers in the world. Now, we don't know whether that will happen or not because it's too early. And the hype is also a lot in a place like Barcelona, and we know that. Yeah. But I think it gives a lot of us culés a lot of hope because there's not much to hope for these days.
We keep saying that, but this is a kid, this is a boy. So those expectations, just keep them in check. He needs that nurturing environment. He needs someone who will take care of him and make sure that he gets where he needs to get. His talent, no question about it. He has everything he needs to be an elite, world-class player. But yeah, for now, let's just take care of him and make sure that he has the environment to get there safely. We hope that you enjoyed it. Make sure to watch the rest of our videos. The one on Hansi Flick is particularly interesting because the coach hunt continues and we will continue with our analysis of coaches next week. So stay tuned for that as we dive into the tactics of Roberto De Zerbi. And I'm sure that people will want to know how this man stacks up against the Barca Eterno and the environment that is Barcelona, which is not always the easiest thing to do. But until then, guys, stay safe, make sure to subscribe, and as ever, Visca el Barça.